Baseball has provided us with so many momentous events. Iconic moments that have etched themselves into Americana. Memories that get passed down from generation to generation, and often through the medium of the person calling the game on the radio or television. Over time, we become acquainted with these personalities, creating these bonds over a shared love of a baseball team. Think of guys like Vin Scully, Bob Uecker, Russ Hodges, Jack Buck, or Ernie Harwell, who I've spoken on before. These special personalities become synonymous with the teams they work for and live on forever through the impact they had on our perception of baseball and the culture surrounding it. Today's video is on a man who served 5 baseball teams in 3 cities across a 52-year career. A man who personally made himself synonymous with the 7th inning stretch, Cubs baseball, and Budweiser beer. From Holy Cow to broadcasting shirtless in the bleachers to take me out to the ballgame. Welcome back to The Bad Baseball Fan. Let's talk about the remarkable career of Harry Caray. Harry Christopher Carabina was born on March 1st, 1914, in St. Louis, Missouri. He never knew his father, and his mother unfortunately passed away when he was only 14 years old. After that, he moved in with his aunt for the rest of his teenage years. He grew up a die-hard St. Louis Cardinals fan, going to games at the old Sportsman Park. He attended Webster Groves High School, playing second base and shortstop for their baseball team at a high level. After graduating from high school, he was offered a scholarship to play baseball at Alabama, but turned it down due to his inability to cover remaining expenses for room and board and books. As a young man, he took jobs here and there, as well as playing semi-pro baseball. At one point, he even attended a tryout for the Cardinals in Decatur, Illinois, but ultimately didn't make the cut. Following this, he took on a sales job for a gym equipment company. He continued to follow his cards through these early years, but he thought the quality of the radio broadcasts were lackluster, and that his beloved team deserved better. Determined to fix it himself, he sent in a letter to the manager of local radio station KMOX, asking to call the Cardinals games himself. Merle Jones, the aforementioned manager, was impressed with Harry's enthusiasm and allowed him to audition for the job. This opportunity didn't lead to Harry on the air for the Cards yet, but rather in Joliet, Illinois, working for radio station WCLS. In Joliet, Harry covered a variety of local sports, and it was there that his boss at WCLS suggested to him that he change his name from Carabina to Caray. He spent a year and a half in Joliet before he moved on to be the sports director for WKZO in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was in Kalamazoo that Caray really honed his radio skills, hosting pregame and postgame shows for Tigers broadcasts, as well as calling basketball and football games for Western Michigan University. His time at WKZO included doing the play-by-play for a semi-pro baseball tournament in Battle Creek, about 30 minutes east of Kalamazoo. It was here, according to the man himself, that he first uttered his famous home run call, "It's my team! It's my team!" as well as his famous catchphrase, "Oh, cool fun fact, the semi-pro tournament was hosted at the same facility where I grew up watching baseball games, a humble place named Bailey Park in Battle Creek, Michigan, which still exists to this day. Anyways, Harry's time in Kalamazoo lasted through 1943, and by early 1944, he was back home in St. Louis working for local radio station KXOK. He worked his way up at KXOK through most of 1944, but at the end of the year, he took up a new job with the Griesdeek Brothers Brewery sponsored station, WIL. The Griesdeek brothers themselves wanted to start broadcasting both Cardinals and Browns games starting in 1945, and Caray managed to persuade brewery president Edward J. Griesdeek to hire him for the job. Starting in the spring of 1945, Harry Caray would become a major league radio broadcaster for not just one, but 2 separate major league teams. Caray worked side by side with former major league catcher and manager Gabby Street, calling both Browns and Cardinals games for the 1945 and 1946 seasons. At the time, no radio station had exclusive rights to broadcast either team, so the pair competed with other local radio stations for attention. Going into the 1947 season, the Griesdeek brothers acquired exclusive broadcasting rights for all Cardinals regular season games. This established Harry Caray and Gabby Street as the voices of the St. Louis Cardinals. Harry's beloved Cardinals won the National League pennant and the World Series in 1946, though he unfortunately wasn't allowed to call the series due to broadcasting restrictions. He worked with Gabby Street until Street's passing in 1951. Following the loss of his partner in the booth, Caray went on broadcasting in St. Louis, first with Joe Garagiola from 1955 through 1962, and then following with Jack Buck from 1963 through 1969. He spent 25 years with the Cards, having the pleasure of calling 3 different fall classics in 1964, 67, and 68, witnessing his team win it all in the 64 and 67 series. Beyond that, he also got to call the 1957 All-Star Game in St. Louis and was on the air for Stan Musial's 3,000th career hit in 1958. Outside the sport of baseball, Caray also called games for the St. Louis Flyers hockey team, the St. Louis Billikens, the St. Louis Hawks, and the Boston Celtics basketball teams, the Missouri Tigers football team, and 8 Cotton Bowls between 1958 and 1966. He even survived a transition in ownership when August A. Bush Jr. bought the ball club in 1953, and the sponsor switched from the Griesteek Brothers to Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Oh yeah, and just like Ernie Harwell, he had the incredible opportunity to be on the air calling the pennant-deciding playoff game between the Giants and Dodgers on October 3rd, 1951 at the Polo Grounds. You know, that time the Giants made one of the greatest late-season pushes in history and clinched the pennant on Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world, and Russ Hodges iconically screaming, "The Giants win the pennant." Yeah, Harry was there in the broadcasting booth too. While reaching such tremendous heights in his broadcasting career, Caray nearly lost it all when he was hit by a car on November 3rd, 1968. He suffered 2 broken legs, a broken shoulder, and a broken nose. He managed to recover in only 3.5 months and was in the booth for opening day in 1969. Unfortunately, that would be his last with his beloved Cardinals. His first 25 years in the booth at the major league level allowed him to establish his unique personality, always willing to criticize his own team for a mistake and just as good at selling his sponsors beer as he was at calling a baseball game. The fans loved him as he was simply just one of them. You could often find Harry out at bars around St. Louis talking it up with the local baseball fans. And though he managed to connect with the fans in such a unique way, his relationship with the team's management and players soured over time due to his criticism. Following the 1969 season, he was fired from the Cardinals broadcasting booth. There were rumors that he had an affair with the owner's daughter, Susan Bush, though these rumors remain unconfirmed. He was quickly hired for a new gig in Oakland for the Athletics. His time there was very short though, only lasting 1 season. He butted heads with team owner Charlie Finley, who had tried to get him to change his catchphrase of "Holy Cow" to "Holy Mule." Entering the 1971 season, Caray took a job with the Chicago White Sox, replacing legendary broadcaster Bob Elson in the booth. He spent 2 years doing exclusively radio broadcasts before adding on television duties as well. It was in Chicago that Harry Caray really played into his laid-back persona, oftentimes even taking a case of beer to the outfield bleachers and broadcasting while drinking with the fans. Still true to himself though, he remained critical of team ownership and the players. Following the 1975 season, team owner John Allen was planning on firing Caray, but ended up selling the team to a group of investors led by Bill Veeck before making the move. This transaction would end up having a monumental impact on baseball culture, as Veeck was the man who convinced Caray to lead the crowd in the singing of "Take Me Out to the Ballgame." Bill Veeck and his group of investors owned the team until 1981, when they sold them to a different group of investors led by Jerry Reinsdorf and Eddie Einhorn. The new ownership group wanted to put the Sox on a subscription-only TV channel, something that Harry Caray was openly opposed to. He decided to leave the Sox after 11 seasons and contacted their Northside rivals, the Cubs, whose longtime TV announcer Jack Brickhouse had just retired. He was quickly hired, and it was at Wrigley Field that he became nationally famous for his bleacher antics, beer commercials, and poor renditions of "Take Me Out to the Ballgame." Working on the north side of Chicago, Caray had the TV broadcasting duties for the first and last 3 innings of Cubs games and spent the middle innings working the radio. Broadcasting on WGN, Harry Caray's fun-loving personality reached over 30 million homes, and he quickly became a national icon. His time in Chicago wasn't all fun and roses, though. Harry unfortunately suffered a very serious stroke on February 17, 1987, and was forced to miss the beginning of that season. He did manage to make a strong recovery and return to a grateful baseball world. Upon his return to Wrigley Field, even President Ronald Reagan gave him an on-air phone call, and ended up paying him a visit to the booth, assisting Caray in calling a ball game. Harry also collapsed on a road trip during the 1994 season and had to be hospitalized. His health had diminished significantly, and doctors advised him to only work during homestands and limit his drinking to virtually none at all. In his own words, "I'm reduced to drinking O'Doul's. Can you imagine Harry Caray unable to drink a martini without a cold Budweiser? It's not me." Still, though, he recovered and continued his duties entertaining Cubs fans and the broader baseball world. His last innings were spent in the broadcasting booth for Chicago, working Cubs games until his unfortunate passing. During this final chapter of his career, he had the pleasure of witnessing the Cubs win 2 NL East titles in 1984 and 1989. And speaking of 1989, that was the year that Harry Caray was awarded the Ford Frick Award for his lifetime contributions to the sport. His son Skip would follow in his footsteps, becoming the voice of the Braves in 1976, and his son Chip joined him in 1991. Thanks to that, Harry ended up having an incredible opportunity to call a ball game with his son and grandson on May 13, 1991 in Atlanta. Going into the 1998 season, the Cubs hired Harry's grandson Chip to work side by side with his grandfather. Unfortunately, while on vacation for Valentine's Day in 1998 with his wife, Harry collapsed during dinner. He had suffered cardiac arrest and lost consciousness. 4 days later, he passed away in the hospital. While the 1998 season would be one for the ages for the Cubs, it would begin in deep mourning. On April 4th, fans filed into Wrigley Field, filled with hope for a new season, but feeling the void left by their announcer of 17 years. The Cubbies took the home opener against the Expos, donning patches in tribute to Harry that would remain all season. But the talk of the day was Harry's wife, Dutchie, who made an appearance and led the crowd in a heart-wrenching rendition of Take Me Out to the Ballgame. It's hard to overstate the cultural impact that Harry Caray left not just on baseball, but the world at large. He was a fan through and through, and he let that shine more than any other broadcaster in the history of the sport. I know I've spoken on the channel before about being a Tigers fan, but I'm a big Cubs fan as well, and I grew up in the wake left behind by his passing. I don't remember him specifically, but for my entire life, Harry Caray has been and will be synonymous with Chicago Cubs baseball. A rather beautiful thing for a man who grew up a Cardinals fan. Harry never had the pleasure of witnessing the Cubs win the World Series like we have. And I know he was on the mind of many in Chicago in 2016. I'll leave you with these prophetic words from the man himself.
Well, a lot of things happened today, and they were all great, and they were all thrilling, and they were all dramatic. Too bad we couldn't have had a victory that meant a pennant, but that will come. Sure as God made green apples, someday the Chicago Cubs are going to be in the World Series, and maybe sooner than we think.